I woke up this morning to the news that government has implemented another austerity measure. But this time, this austerity measure is again going to affect those political appointees that the president himself has appointed over the last 6 months. And this time it had to do with fuel allowances that have completely been scrapped. This indeed is the first time a government is taking this sort of very extreme measure to completely scrap the fuel allowances given to political appointees. In the past, other governments, including this government itself, had done a reduction, but not a complete scrapping. So what it means tonight is that for the very first time, all government appointees, all appointees of the president, for the first time will have to buy their own fuel. They will drive to the pump just like all of us do in the morning, fill their tanks and pay themselves. They will pay the taxes that we all pay and feel the pinch that we all feel. And as you know, fuel is a thing that affects us all. Once fuel prices go up, we all feel the pinch. In the past, the politicians have been cocooned, protected and shielded from that particular effect. At the back of this announcement today, that is exactly what is going to happen. And the big man put that thick red cross in that middle of fuel allowances today. So this is a big deal indeed. But here's a big picture. This isn't the first. What you see on your screens right now is, for us, reading between the lines, the fundamental reason why this decision to scrap the fuel allowances was introduced at the time it was introduced today. Because tomorrow, 16 July, when you wake up in the morning, the cost of fuel at the pumps for you will go up. Because government's 1 cedi levy takes effect tomorrow, 16th of July. So you begin immediately to see why this, for the government, was a strategic move. To show to all of us, the citizens, that when you're about to buy more, you can rest assured that your politicians and your government appointees who actually sat in cabinet and dreamt up this 1% fuel levy themselves will be feeling that 1% in their pockets. So they're not going to be shielded from it this time. So clearly, this is a strategic reason. When you read the statement, it didn't say, but the government was sending a message. That is why if you listen to the minority, they are saying something completely different, right? You need to also put it in a bigger context of those who will be affected by this particular measure. Ministers will be affected. You have those who work in the department and agencies all be affected. The MMDAs will all be affected if you work in that area. The state-owned enterprises will also be affected. We'll tell you what the minority is saying. Also remember the point I made about the fuel prices going up tomorrow because of the 1 cedi levy, and why government has not said that, but it's very obvious why this was done now. Because remember that when the 1 cedi was imposed, there was opposition to it, right? I mean, so why do we always have the case that the political class seem to burden us all, but then they excuse themselves from the pain? Because we get them, we buy cars for them, we fuel the cars, we give them maintenance allowance. So the president was doing this. That is why the minority say it is a PR gimmick. It is a populist gesture. But is it really? Because, as I said, other governments in the past have tried this. The former government tried a 50% reduction in fuel, was imposed by former president Nana Akufo-Addo. VAs were banned from cross-country travel at the time. The question about whether this was effective and tracked, the jury's still out on that particular question. And then we know at the time, if you look at the 2023 total allowances paid to the political appointees, huge. That's 9.13 million on a host of things. Fuel, you have a housing, utility, domestic security. So they really enjoy a fair bit of allowances and perks. But this, for me, is a picture that drives home the message of the potential impact of this. And this is according to the Comptroller and Accountants General Department. If you look at the 2022 figures, of the total full allowance payments to government appointees. We're talking about 438 million. And then this increased to 600 million in 2023. We don't have the figures for 2024, but you can expect that will go up too, right? And then 2025, you can expect to go up even further. So give or take, you're doing more, you're saving more than 600 million, right, annually. We're going to analyze that with my guests, see if they also have done some computations. They can give us a sense of how much this is going to save. But the government must know, you do not implement this sort of measure when you have not sat down to figure out how much this will save you for it to be worth our while. The government must know, and we have a government rep with us. He must tell us. So what really is a strategic purpose for doing this? How much do you plan to save? What do you want to use the money for? Key questions we'll ask tonight when we sit for conversation. But let's put this in the bigger context, shall we? Because the IMF is wielding the cane still over us in terms of the commitments we've made and the discipline that we want to implement as far as our economy is concerned. Two things we told the IMF will do, and we agreed with the IMF to do. One is we're going to mobilize revenue, okay? First thing. And we know mobilizing revenue in Ghana is a challenging act. We don't always succeed because there's always a shortfall. If you can't do this properly and achieve your targets, the second thing you do is to do this, cut expenditure. And in the bigger scheme of things, that's what government is doing. And that is why we need to have this conversation. So this is not just a story about scrapping fuel allowances. It fits within the bigger context of expenditure controls. If you rein in your expenditure, then you are on the track of ensuring that you are only spending what you earn, or you're not exceeding or cutting your coat clearly according to your size, which fundamentally has been our challenge with this economy, where we spend far more than we rake in terms of revenues, and there's some fiscal slippages. Government wants to do that. So we have to put that in the bigger context. It's part of our meeting our IMF targets and indicators. So that's where we are with the government deciding to control expenditure. This is where this fuel scrapping matter sits. So that is the big picture. That is the big picture. And it's not the only thing the government had done. Another thing that they've done to try and deliver on this objective here is, that they've capped ministers and deputies at 60. So this is the smallest government yet in the Fourth Republic, right? You have ban on first-class travel, other savings coming from there. You have travel requires presidential authorization, and then they've also banned the subscriptions to satellite television, right? And the last time I read, they were saving 120,000, I believe, CDs a month on that. So there's a big picture here, and this only fits into that. But is this delivering the real returns, the real savings that will really make an impact on our revenue, expenditure dynamics? And that, for me, is a key thing. Or this is just a drop in the ocean that needs a bit more fiscal policy to drive and to back this, right? We need to put that in the bigger context. We'll talk about that. And then we have if we look at the Finance Ministry's expenditure controls that we've seen, reversal of the last-minute appointment, amendments to the Public and Financial Act. You have the audit of the 2024 first quarter arrears and reducing tax exemptions. All fit in the bigger context. Because if you look at this trend line, it tells you that our expenditure has been growing consistently over time. In 2024, we were doing 260 billion in terms of our expenditure. This has climbed slightly, in spite of all the cuts and expenditure control that we are talking about. It's climbed slightly to 268, some 18% climb. If you look at 2023 to 2024, we are talking about in excess of 30% climb, right? And so you need to arrest this. It's slowing down, but is it slowing down fast enough? Can they sustain these cuts over time? It remains to be seen. And that's a big conversation we need to have about sustaining these cuts over time. Can you keep this fuel subsidy and allowance scrapped for the entire 4 years, and what the impact will be on productivity for the departments and agencies that rely on this, those who work in the government, right? So we'll ask that question also. So there's a trade-off, right? What are we trading off? What are we giving away to ensure that we remain within the fiscal discipline that we've signed on to? So the minority says, well, ignore the government. This is just another PR gimmick. and it won't achieve much. But is that really the case? We'll ask my guest. And then they say, if you really want to show that you are committed to this, then close your fuel depot at Jubilee and the Castle, because that's where the ministers and appointees drive to fill it. Yes, go to Jubilee House. They have a fuel pump station there for themselves, where they go and fill their tanks. Might say scrap it to show, remove that from there, close it completely to show that you are really committed to this. And then you have the key questions that must be asked. I've asked a few already. How much will this save us? And if you look at the savings, is it even worth it? Are there exemptions, say, for some group of appointees or everybody else? Will the president, for example, buy his own fuel? It's a question that must be asked. And those closest to him, the vice president, they're all members of the government, political figures. So will the president himself take a hit? Or we need to explain that. And then where will the funds be channeled to? What else are you going to use the money for once you save it? My guest will join me for a conversation, looking at the big question, and where do you situate it within the bigger economic policy agenda to keep us disciplined and the economy on track to full recovery? My guest after this. Joining us and staying with us here on PM Express, a conversation about government austerity, and a very interesting austerity strategy, you must say, because in the past when austerity is mentioned, the guys who bear the brunt of that are mere mortals like ourselves. The political appointees often are exempted from feeling the pinch themselves. They say tighten the belt, but they are losing theirs. Well, the president says he wants to adopt a different approach, and so he is imposing that austerity on his own people first before he imposes it on you. So look at the order of things in terms of what is going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow when you wake up and go to the fuel pump, 1%, 1 Ghana cedi will be on top of what you buy on the petrol and diesel, and already the oil marketing companies say expect at least 8% increase in what you buy at the pump. So the president says immediately before the rest of us feel that pinch, my appointees must begin to feel it too. So it takes immediate effect, and it's taken effect already from what we understand. We'll actually ask if indeed it has taken effect or another political gimmick as a minority is maintaining. But there's also a bigger conversation to be had. This really is about economic discipline, reining in expenditure to keep on track with the economic recovery, meet your IMF program targets. And that is why it is just one of a list of things this government say they have done. But the key question really is, what is the strategic value to the economy? And why are you doing this? How much are you going to save? What do you want to use the money for? And is this even worth the hassle? My guest joining me for a conversation, obviously, in the studio with me, is representing the government. And I'm curious to hear his own thoughts on this, as I expect that he will be affected by this measure. That's Sharif joins us in the studio with his thoughts on this. Sharif Khalid is the economic advisor to the vice president. He's in the studio with me. Professor Godfred Bokwing is an economist and professor of finance. Also joins me. Franklin Kujo is with Imani. He's the president there. Also joins me. And of course, I'm delighted to have him in the studio for the very first time. Tunibu Akodia Foucault is MP for Manso and Kwanta. And I believe you are the deputy ranking on the Economy and Development Committee. That's a committee that Kujo Ponkruma is the chair, correct? Okay, good.
You're finance, rather.
Yeah.
Combi.
Yeah, right. Economy.
Because it's NIB.
Yes. Oh, you know him there?
Yeah, I know him.
Okay, good, good. That Tunibu Akodia is joining us in the studio on this too. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. And PMS is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. It's also brought to you by Pepsodent Cavity Fighter and Academic Times newspaper. Khalid, let me start with you.
Yeah.
You are the man in government who should feel this.
Yeah.
We were told from the statement that this takes immediate effect. Immediate is immediate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Has it taken effect?
It has. And I wouldn't say I'm a victim, but I've experienced it.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I want to call a bit of correct, the expression to say austerity. I don't think we are in austere times where we have to have austerity measures. I would rather prefer it as internal control rather than austerity, where we have internal control.
Revenue austerity.
Well, internal control is the word to use, I think, from a governance perspective and from, a management perspective of what we're trying to do as a government. I mean, I've come from a space where I'm not really used to fuel coupons or probably drawing. So I think I'd accumulated a few receipts of fuel that I needed to, but I didn't have enough time to. But once the announcement was made, I heard it in gist. I read it from the government spokesperson's Facebook page. Well, it said immediate effect, but it didn't really still dawn on me. Okay. So I drove all the way to the castle and I was told I can't draw. So what it told me is that was what it was. So it's immediate effect, and immediate effect is immediate.
They had fuel, but they said no.
They did have fuel, but they said, look, the president has issued an order, and that's what it is. So we
had no prior briefing at all?
No, well, I mean, there would be prior briefings.
As in this says, prior notification that on a certain date this is going to take effect?
Yeah, but the statement said immediate effect.
Immediately, yeah. I mean, what I mean is if you work for the president,
oh, yeah, I mean, we all had this. That's sometimes
something was coming.
Yourself. No, we knew that these things were going to come.
Okay. Right? Specifically knew that fuel scrapping.
A lot of issues that have been coming around in terms of actually fixing the situation on the ground to actually have internal controls. You will have, memos coming from the chief of staff to say, okay, well, this is where we're taking things to, and you all, brace yourselves for it. But as I said, as human as we are, you still forget yourself in, certain measures. But, so when the president says immediate effect is immediate effect, immediate effect is immediate effect.
But you raise a fundamental point and comes back to the sheer word I used earlier. So why though? Because these are measures that you typically find during austerity, times of austerity.
Well, I mean, and yes, I'm saying we are not in austere measures in times, if you put it that way.
So why? So why?
Okay, so I'm coming to that. All of these things, I think that there's a level of modernization to governance that President John Dramani Mahama brings to the fore as well. All of this, if you look at the historical background to all of fuel allowances, housing allowances, accommodation, it all stems from a very colonial perspective. And these are legacy issues that governments inherited, or, once we inherited from colonial administration, which was meant to placate workers and also to serve as sort of a salary supplement. Because back in the day, salaries of civil servants, or for that matter, people, public service, was not that lucrative. So these were some of the measures that were put in place to attract the best of the best to come in. So as we move on with all of what is happening, and because some compensations are being made elsewhere, some of these legacy issues still exist, and governments carry them through in the train of governance. Yeah. But this is something President Mahama said, look, let's pause and really have a good look at this. And that's what's coming in studio. I asked myself, I mean, when we say PR gimmick, we really not fair to the issue. Because once we look at this, I crunched some numbers whilst I stayed in here.
Because the fundamental question that hasn't been answered is the strategic objective of this. And you have to drill that down to, okay, so first, if you talk about expenditure controls, how much are you hoping to save from this? And then what are you going to use it for?
Okay, ballpark, right? I'm not come out to say, okay, this is what it's going to be used for. I'm sure subsequently the president and the government communication machinery will be coming out to say, okay, this is what we'll use the money for. But ballpark, right, this is what I did in studio using Goyle's figures, right, in terms of, per liter. You look at it and, ballpark, again, I looked at 4x4 and saloon vehicles, right, cross-country. So let's say 500 of saloon, 500 for 4x4. And we're looking at probably 50 liters of fuel. 4 saloon vehicles a week per government. The vehicles could be the fleet could be more than 1,000, but I'm just using 1,000 as a benchmark figure here to see what we could accumulate just by looking at 1,000 vehicles, of which 500 are saloon and 500 are 4x4. If you crunch the numbers a bit, and again, I mean, as I said, I'm using Goyle figures at the pump as of the time I was doing this when I cross-check. On average, we're talking about assuming all these vehicles are being used equally. So we're talking 500 liters here. On average, the government will be saving probably about a total of 2,500,000, right, plus a month, right, and 30 million plus a year. In 4 years, we're probably talking about, again, caveat here, these are ballpark figures. We could crunch them at the right time. So these were things I think we could do before we actually want to say that whether it's a PR gimmick or not. In 4 years, we're probably talking a government saving 121 plus million in 4 years. Now I try to look at this. Again, Paul Park using figures of what I think I could come by in terms of social interventions.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at these figures of 4 years, we're probably talking about, let's say, a maternity block for a hospital or clinic costs probably about 1.5 million. I'm not saying it does cost. Again, this is me making projection and extrapolations. We could probably get an average of 81 of them out of the savings. That is if you use 1,000 fleet. 500 being saloon, 400 being 4x4 in terms of the quantitative figures we're looking at. Then, in terms of chip compounds, we're probably talking about 303 chip compounds. In terms of 6-unit classroom blocks, we're talking 121 of them, if each of them is costing probably $1 million. So there's some real justification to what it is. And I'm sure this fleet is over 1,000. If you look at it, if you add ministers, government agencies, SEOs, among other issues. But I look at it ballpark from that perspective. And I'm not saying this is what the government is doing. I'm just trying to give a holistic picture of what expectation we could have and the savings we could make if we actually adhere to this policy, which is rolling.
So 30 million a year?
Ballpark.
Okay.
Most likely. Depending on what I'm thinking it is. Using 50 liters saloon, 80 liters 4x4.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Trinidad, I'll come to you pretty shortly. I just want to go to my number crunchers who are joining me on Zoom right now. Franklin is on, but I would love to have Bokping also join us. They are number crunchers. And Imani does these analysis using data that they can source openly. And I wonder, Franklin, if since this announcement was made, has Imani attempted to try and understand how much savings we can expect to be making, for example, and whether that is significant enough to justify what government is doing here? We'll expand it to the other cost-cutting, revenue, expenditure control measures. But on this one, have you sort of thought about the potential savings here?
Well, good evening, my good friends in the studio. Evans, good to see you. Well, first of all, it's a bit difficult to put a figure to it right now, especially because we just heard about it. It's a pity that we've not been doing this work for a while now. I mean, I think, I'm sure it's really difficult to put a figure to it right now. That's all I can say. But however you look at it, somehow I can say that we should welcome it. The only problem I have is on the very day, I think, was it 2 days or 3 days ago that the government decided to give nurses full allowance. And so you ask yourself, what exactly are we trying to achieve here? In one breath, you are giving it to some other government appointees. But then in one breath, you're saying you're taking them from the political appointees as well. So we need some justification for it. But however, whatever it is, I think we are happy that at least some of these, some of these little signs actually make people feel that, look, at least the politician understands the circumstances or our current circumstances and may want to, as it were, have people talk about the fact that, look, they do indeed sacrifice. But of course, when you use the word PR gimmick, I'm not too sure my good friend, Dr.
Khalid?
Just trying to get my name.
Khalid?
Yeah, my brother. Sorry. I'm sure you know that tomorrow, is it tomorrow? I think.
Tomorrow.
Are we not paying the one CD?
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a perfect PR campaign. And you can't fault John Muhammad, you can't fault the NBC for doing that. I think whoever actually advised John to, whoever is rebranding or has rebranded John has really done well. Because I was looking at this whole thing, I was like, okay, well, tomorrow we are supposed to be paying a CD on a liter. Then the day before, we are being told that, politicians are so great people, they love us, and so all of a sudden they are ceding their full allowance. Perfect story. I mean, you can beat that, right? But we need to get into the specifics, and I think that's where we would find out whether indeed it's make a significant thing. I mean, don't forget, this is a president, or this is a government, actually the president, we should say, who has actually reduced the ministers from almost a number of about 110 to 60, right? Even
yeah.
recent, yeah, 60. And those estimates, if you look at the savings we're making or we are going to make on the number of ministers that have been slashed, it's almost about 200 million Ghana cedis. And if you look at the total savings from 2024 to 2028, you are in the region of about 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. I mean, if you decided to add the ex gratia payments, which are supposedly going to be scrapped, that's another 1.2 billion and over that you're looking at. So, in fact, if you add all of this, you could see that there are significant savings being made when it comes to the size of them. But there's one thing I need to say though. I think we should move away from these, what I call, crotchety type of campaigns. And again, they are PR campaigns, but they're effective, right? And then let's have a conversation about the optimal size of government.
Yeah.
How much does our government need to function? Do we need 30 people working in a particular area? What skill sets do they have? Have we quantified their skill set? The productivity we are supposed to be exacting from these persons who get all these freebies as part of their service package. We need to have those conversations. And if we have that and codify it, it will be easier for us to, throw numbers about. But if we don't take care, I mean, I don't think that the next president, whoever, will be interested in scrapping for allowance. I've heard many people say, "Oh, let's put it into law." I've actually said it in the morning, but as the day progresses, I realize that, well, look, instead of asking for all these things to be done, why don't we have a proper conversation? I think the emoluments committee, that they normally set up, has significantly failed us. I don't think they have done a very good job when it comes. Anyway, they are only called to decide emoluments. So let me be fair to them. But we need to have a proper conversation about productivity, the optimal size of the government, the skill set we need, and then that way wouldn't be.
Let me come back and hopefully we can get Prof to join us. Maybe he had done some computing and see if it agrees with the ballpark numbers that Khalid was talking about. But Mr. Chunibwa, so from the minorities' point of view, what's your assessment of this measure?
Yeah, thank you, my brother. And I greet my listeners and viewers. See, on its own, such a policy, I would say, it's not bad. You are trying to make savings for the government, which is not bad. It's savings to the nations. So on its own, it's not bad. But then we ask ourselves, really, what is triggering this? What really is starting this? What brought about this? And if you look at it, it's interesting, the timing, the coincidence of this measure.
It doesn't appear a coincidence at all.
It looks like coincidence, So the timing of it is interesting. So, like I said, it's fine if a government is starting its term with austerity. That is fine. We are 6 months into the government, and if it's starting with austerity, that is fine. But the sheer coincidence is interesting that tomorrow we are having the implementation of the fuel levy, the so-called 1 cedi per litre levy that is being charged on the ordinary Ghanaian, which translates into about 8% of cost per litre, which is huge, on the pockets of Ghanaians. And at the same time, then we are throwing this so minute of a saving, which I see it as not a saving in terms of financial wealth to the nation, but a saving of face, to save the government face. That is bringing this levy, which is so unpopular with Ghanaians. Ghanaians showed their displeasure with this levy. And in implementing it, the government definitely knows Ghanaians are not interested in this levy. Ghanaians know that this morally, the current government is finding it difficult to implement this. Because you spoke against e-levy. So morally, e-levy that was charging 1%, you are charging 8% per litre, So morally, the government is struggling to implement this so-called fuel levy. So what is it trying to do? Then, oh, I'm cutting fuel coupons to my appointees. So I'm making savings to the nations. So that is it, trying to save face. But if you compare the two, look at it. I mean, my brother here was, his ballpark calculation, he said about 30 million. If you look at 30 million, if that is the ballpark figure.
No.
I'm coming.
Sample of vehicles.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, double it. Okay, double it. 60 million. You said 30 million. Double it. 60 million. So 60 million. When the Minister for Finance read the budget in March, he said that the fuel levy was going to raise revenue of about 5.7 billion Ghana cedis. If you work out 30 million out of 5.7, it gives you about 0.5%. That is peanut. So I'm coming. So if you are going to, be harsh on the pockets of Ghanaians to that extent that every liter of fuel purchase, you are going to take 8% as levy. To make it look justifiable, to save your face, you're not saying you are going to save some 30 million or make it 60 million, which is 0.05%. What are we talking about here? So if the government indeed wants to bring in fiscal consolidation or austerity at this point, and it's interesting for a government that is starting to bring in, or you are starting with austerity.
Well, he says it's not austerity.
No, I'm coming.
It is
no, the terminology fine, no. But it is what it is. It's fiscal consolidation. So whether you call it, that this afternoon I heard somebody saying it's part of the reset. Yes, reset, fine. But what you are doing in reality is that you're trying to cut costs. And that is fiscal consolidation. So let me finish. So Evans, if you look at it, yes, you made so much noise that the previous government was being whatever uncaring, it was overtaxing Ghanaians, it was doing whatever. Now you come in. If the previous government was taxing 1%, you are doing 8%. So when you ask this question, then what people say, yeah, that we have energy debt, energy sector debt outstanding. So now the issue is about the purpose for the revenue that will be collected. Interesting. So e-levy had no purpose. E-levy. There was no purpose for collecting e-levy. It was just being collected. But for fuel levy, there's a purpose. It's to pay outstanding debt. So that is justifiable.
On the scrapping of the allowance, though, it helps to know that your political appointees will also now be paying the same amount for fuel as we all do, doesn't it? I mean, isn't that where the value of this really is?
Evans, look, we need to be bold as a country. And as a government, if you are bringing in a policy, I believe you can be bold. Look, when the NPP was in power, when Nanado came up with some austerity measures, it was bold.
Let's talk about fuel. You also was a 50%.
No, I'm coming 50%.
Theirs was a complete scrap.
But at the same time, he said, all my appointees, your salaries, I'm cutting by 30%. That was bold statement. So you don't go scratching the surface and saying fuel coupons and whatever.
But he did that. But he had 100+ ministers. They have 60.
Yes, I believe if we're going to go into that, then we will show the figures as to, yes, the number of ministers reduced, but the staffers increased. And we know the budgetary allocations. Okay, so you see, you can just call whatever. So if you say you've reduced the number of ministers, what is the budgetary allocations? Compare the two governments and see the budgetary allocations. So it's not just about number of ministers, but about how much you are spending on the ministers plus staffers. That is what is important.
You're not saying categorically that this has no value for economic discipline, fiscal consolidation, reining in expenditure.
Evans, I'm not saying it is nothing, but what I'm saying is it is not bold enough. Like he's saying, 30 million, double it, make it 60 million. 60 million out of 5.7 billion.
Or 1,000 fleets. That's misleading as though this is what government is saving. So just
even let me increase it for you. Look, if you look at the 2023 as been projected, I'm coming. 2023, it's indicated that there was a figure of what is it 6?
Yeah. So you mean fuel allowance?
Yeah, fuel allowance.
Yeah, but this is for all government employees, and this according to the Controller and Accountant General. Yeah. So in 2022, 600 million.
Down.
600 million. Yeah.
This is rolled down. Let's say 30, so I'll make it 60. Yeah. That comes to about 1%. So if it's 1% of what the government is going to, impoverish Ghanaians by introducing this fuel levy, then for me, like I'm saying, it's not bold. It's just for the optics. It's just to save face morally for somebody to be able to stand and say, yes, the fuel levy starts tomorrow, but look, I'm doing something else to save.
Yeah, Mr. Chudaba, just a second. Khalid, he has a point there, has he not? Because I picked up on it. Yeah. Imani picks up on it. He's picked up on it. Yeah. That the timing, you can't ignore the timing of this. That this really is just to justify you imposing 80% of the pumps on us.
I really don't get it. But my brother was MD of NIB a few months ago. I'm sure if we're looking at it from that perspective, all the conditions of service he was enjoying on fuel allowance, and we want to accumulate that over a period of 4 years, that's something quite substantial, and he'll admit that. Well, if he wants us to crunch numbers openly, we could do that. So if a government is actually doing this and you call it safe-facing, then I'm really surprised at that. But then again, you look at this. Imagine where you'd realize that these contexts that we are trying to pull in to actually justify a PR gimmick does not work is that the announcement was made some few weeks ago. Then we had the Israeli situation. The president stepped in. This is someone who responds to the market, responds to events of the time, and said, look, can we have a pause to this owing to what is happening? Now you run a scenario analysis of what is happening within the Israeli landscape and that of Iran, and you realize that when you look at it even with worst case scenario, where it's going to take a barrel of oil to, how is it going to affect the economy globally, and how to have an effect on our local market. It's not very impactful. Then he moves forward to say, okay, well, I'm introducing this. However, this is that. How is that a PR gimmick? Now, in any case, if they had maintained ESLA and not dissipated it, I don't think we'll be going for a one.
I guess the other way to ask the question is, will this have been imposed on you if you were not imposing one Ghana cedi levy on fuel?
Obviously, yes, because the president started, right, where the DSTV issues, did they not occur before the imposition of this?
It did.
So it's a series of measures or internal controls, right, that the president and his team tinkered through and go over to say, okay, well, can we start by this? What is it that we could do first? DSTV, we got it off, right? What is next?
You actually reduce your size of government first.
Yeah, I'm just coming, like Woodin, after forming government, because he promised that I was going to have, 60 ministers. And when did he even have his last 4 announced? Only a few days ago. So this will tell you that this is a very careful president who is calculated, who responds to the exigencies of the time. And as I indicated, when Israel-Iran occurred, he had, this announcement was made, it was held back, and now being introduced. If there's just a sheer coincidence of that happening, I think that we still need to pat him at the back to say, okay, well, this is what is happening because governance keeps rolling. The wheel of governance is going. But what I want to fundamentally state is that if ESLA was maintained, will we be going even to a one cedi announcement at the pump? No. If the sinking fund was not dissipated, would we be doing that? We're talking about an IMF or, an IMF World Bank report, a British institution report. If you look at it, look at the debt we're accumulating, right? The report is dated 2024, and that's just sometime, a few months ago, which shows the quantum levels of debt we're accumulating in the energy sector per GDP. Astronomical. So as we come in as a government, how do we have a breathing space? So we all know that we're going to have a bit of a pinch at that. They say, look, my appointees, come along. Let's all have a pinch of this. Let's see how we can rally around ourselves with the good people of Ghana as we introduce this as well to see how we could, pay these legacy debts again that we have inherited. Mind you, we made the creation of ESLA due to legacy debts in the energy sector. So if we don't create this breathing room where there's no financial headroom to do anything, how is governance expected to function? Mind you also that these measures being taken by President Mahama, it's not like the IMF or the World Bank have a whip behind him. These are internal controls generated by a government itself. But in time past, you have IMF programs.
It's not in a vacuum.
Forcing
what you're doing isn't in a vacuum.
But we've met the targets. It's in a vacuum in the sense that if you look at the reviews that have come, since the IMF, since we took office, the IMF reviews that have come, we've exceeded targets.
Yeah, I know. But
so if we hadn't exceeded targets, that's where you'd say we are not doing it in a vacuum.
No,
but if we exceeded targets and we are still doing this, it tells you the kind of stability
but you still
we want
need
to have as a
rein
government.
in expenditure. I mean, that is a must, and fundamentally you have to find all manner of ways to do this.
Yeah, which is?
In your budget, you've shown that you want to really significantly rein in expenditure. That's why we've seen a lot of the cuts.
Yeah.
The finance minister was here, very categorical about only going to be spending when indeed there's a need to.
But
we've seen the government.
For any government that has inherited the kind of economy we have, that's the only way to.
Exactly, that's my point. So,
so how do you have
it's not, that's what I'm saying.
So we're not even hiding
It's not
that.
a vacuum. You're doing this fundamentally because, one, you are in an IMF program, and so you have to be.
No, but we are not adhering to an IMF program. That's what I'm saying. We've exceeded targets. Mind you, we inherited an overheated economy.
Yeah.
We are trying to cool off the
what are
economy.
your revenue numbers like? Because that then will tell you. Because either you're raising enough revenue or you're cutting expenditure. You have chosen.
I mean, we're just going for a
to cut
mid-year
expenditure.
Review. We're just going for a mid-year review. What are your extrapolation of revenue saying? Because we have.
I don't know.
I thought you had some figures.
No, I'm just asking. I have no idea.
Yeah, we are on course to meeting revenue targets, actually. Because if you look at the program, if we weren't, the IMF reviews would have mentioned that we are not on course to meeting that. And you've seen stability in the economy. You've seen currency stability. And again, I'll repeat this on this platform. You've seen a synchronization of economic communications from the executive arm of government, from the government treasury, which is a finance ministry, and the central bank, which is meant to control inflation.
I mean, Mr. Trinidad,
and currency stability. So I don't
you
really see
cannot take away
we really want to force it to be
that
a PR issue when it's not.
You cannot take away. You say that it could be face saving, but the evidence contradicts that, because this is a government, this is just one measure in a series of measures. The first, reducing the government numbers to 60, clearly shows a government that wants to rein in expenditure and control what they spend. Then you have this first class cancellation. You can't travel on the first class anymore. Then you have the donating their salaries to, you donated your 1 month salary, I believe, to the Mahama Cares program, which in essence would have been funded through normal.
And Evans, to add this, you know it's a campaign promise.
Yeah, it was.
Right, so...
And then now you have the DSTV satellite, instruction that says don't subscribe anymore, no matter how small the savings is, save that. And then now you have this latest one, which is the scrapping of the levies. And then you can also know, in terms of your V8s and all, you are only allowed to use, your vehicles that you can drive in the city. That clearly shows, and you see it in the budget also, the big lines trying to rein in expenditure. It is not something you're just doing out of the blue. This clearly looks like a government that wants to have an agenda of strict, aggressive cost cutting.
Yeah, thank you, Evans. Thank you. You see, running a whole country's budget should not be likened to being in your home and running some small family budget, okay? So if you're talking about, restricting luxury travels and those kind of things and not using your VAs, and these are pittance compared to, what you need to run a whole country.
Such as?
If you're running a budget for a country, the sort of revenue that you need to run a country versus the expenditure that you need to make, okay? You are talking about significant amounts of money. So if today the government says that, yes, it's starting with austerity, so it's not spending. Think about it. It's not spending, so he's talking about appointees not taking whatever flights, not going on whatever. These are peanuts.
But they've reduced the size of government, which is a huge saving.
That's what
Frank Train talks about 200 million or so, he says. That
what I'm saying is, I spoke about that earlier.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, don't let us be misled about the number of ministers, ministers. Look at the staffers as well. So it's about the expense that we make on the government. Look at the budget that was made, the lines that were put there for the government itself, government machinery. And you see that staffers, the cost on staffers was so much. And that is what we are talking about. So if for the optics, you go out to say that my ministers are X number, but then there are so many staffers costing the nation, then actually it's deceit. Okay, it's deceit. And what I'm saying is, you see, to run a whole government budget, it's not child's play. It's not like I've saved, like you're saying with this coupon issue, I've saved 30 million, I've saved 60 million. No, we're talking about significant amounts of money.
On a ballpark number of cards. Let's not mislead the public.
I'm not misleading the public.
Now, when you say 60, it means that the
whole
project is going to cost. But I ran an example to tell you that, okay, if we use 1,000
you said 30, I've even
and I
doubled
said
it.
1,000 fleets.
Okay, you can triple it.
Unless, of course, you have your own numbers.
No, you can triple it
Right.
to help the conversation. So what I'm saying is, see, you need programs of transformation, programs that will transform the nation. So if it is about revenue, what are your programs to enhance revenue? We know that Ghana, our revenue to GDP is one of the lowest on the continent. What is your program to improve revenue? We want to know this.
But also to grow GDP.
No, yes, grow GDP, but if we were even able to raise revenue of about 20% of GDP, we would have been better. But we are not there. So tell the country that today I've been able to raise revenue from X to Y. That is much more important than saying I have saved some. I don't want to use the 30 million, but I've saved some patent. Okay, we're looking at the entire nation. What will really transform this nation? That is what we are looking at.
You're not seeing any real big transformation economic measure.
That's what I'm saying. What has been announced about fuel coupons?
But that's the point. That is not the only measure, though, in the last 6 months.
The other measures talk about the travel, the whatever,
size of government, the reduction.
Size of government, I've already.
You've mentioned, but you should mention that it comes with a package.
If you put all together, it's not really anything.
And then also the expenditure controls that we saw in the budget. You say they are not spending, but
yes, the expenditure control. You see, that is why when I started, I said, yes, if you are starting a government with austerity, then that is interesting. Because Ghanaians voted for a government to come in and transform the economy. You transform the economy. You haven't seen
transformation?
You transform the economy by raising your revenue, spending that revenue in transformational agendas. You don't come in and say, yes, I'm holding on. Austerity. You are starting with austerity. How would the economy grow? How would the economy grow for people to get jobs? How would the economy grow for us to replace imports? How would the economy grow for us to export more? How would we transform the economy? So if you are starting with austerity, then that is interesting.
Where is the austerity?
But so the fuel coupon that you are talking about,
hold on a second.
You said right from the beginning.
So cutting a minister's salary, or cutting a minister's fuel cost, right, such that it is not a burden or financial burden to a state, has a way of affecting the economy in a negative sense. Is that what you say?
Let's be careful the context that we put
I'm not really getting this.
The context that we put it.
Why the austerity is not? This is nowhere near austerity.
Okay, but you
talking about internal control.
I asked when I started can I come in because I was in the state. When I came, the first question I asked was, what really triggered this? What started this?
It's a campaign
based on your
in 2024. President Mahama promised that he was going to cut all of these costs. And this included the series of costs that we are rolling now. So how is that an issue here? How is that a gimmick? And how is that austerity? This cabinet is honoring a campaign promise.
Please let me finish my submission. So we have the bigger issue of the government trying to charge Ghanaians 1 cedi per litre of fuel, which translates into 8% of every litre of fuel purchase. That is the bigger issue. And what I said was, the government, in trying to save face, because when the government was coming into power, what he said was, it was a government that was not going to tax Ghanaians, really. It was going to make life
you made the point.
easier.
You think this is just
that's
a
what I'm saying. So
measure.
because he was going back.
No, but he's trying to respond to the austerity
and how it will affect the economy and not let it grow.
What I'm
by
saying is,
costs.
all that the point I'm trying to make is that it is insignificant. This saving that we are claiming we are making, it's insignificant compared to what you are taking from the pockets of the ordinary Ghanaian.
Let me put that to Franklin, who is on. Franklin, what do you make of that point, that this is insignificant?
It's a bit of politics. It may not be significant, the sums may not, but it makes a little dent, you know. I mean, it makes a little impact, if assuming if it was even 1.2 million or 30 million cedis. I'm sure it would do something. And I think we need to wait for the full figures before we start condemning. I think it is important to make the other point that, look, the administration's OGM, which is the Office of Government Machinery's budget, is not bloated. I think there's been very and I find it very what's the word I want to use? I don't think it is right to be suggesting that the OGM is bloated, simply because what the government has done is to just rearrange most of the various entities, those ministries that were not well, you know, they needed to rearrange, but basically reduce a few ministries and all of that. So a lot more has been added to the OGM, but it doesn't mean that the original OGM figure of 2024 has been ballooned or has been increased. I think if you do that analysis, I think it's disingenuous. I'm not too sure it's a proper way of analyzing data.
I mean, but on a big economic point, though, I mean, do you see any real substantive economic benefits coming out of this particular measure?
Well, we are discussing it, aren't we? Because we feel that it is likely. I feel that however the sum, I mean, look, 30 million or 40 million or 50 million, well, in the scheme of things, you may think it is not significant. And I think, as I said earlier, I think we should be looking at the what do you call it, the intent behind some of these things. I mean, assuming we had many of these cuts, or if you like, freebies that were taken away, by the end of the day, I'm sure we'll have something significant to talk about. So I look at it from a governance standpoint. I look at it from an accountability standpoint. I look at it from a standpoint of feeling for the ordinary Ghanaian. And I think these things are very important, and we can't run away from them.
I mean, what about the question of, is the government being aggressive enough? Because you have two options to deal with the economic challenges that we have. IMF talks about you're either raising revenue or you're cutting expenditure, or doing both. We see that they want to do both. They want to raise the revenues. We know historically it's been a challenge for every government. And then they are now trying to rein in expenditure. But are they being aggressive, transformational? I guess is the point that Boy is making in the way they are tackling this, instead of this drip of measures of DSTV cutting subscriptions and, scrapping fuel allowances.
Well, there's a bit of the populist aspect as well. I mean, all those DSTV, what I call forced cuts in businesses' prices, it sounds too like interventionist for me. It sounds like some sort of communist arrangement. But see, look, and you're right. If you look at the government's, should I call it, approaches to maximizing revenue, I think they have a long way to go. But I've been assured, in fact, I've been having a lot of conversations with the GRA boss of late, and I think he assures me that, look, they are putting in a lot of tech-based systems to get this thing done. And I'm sure that they'll be able to do quite well. I know of a system, by the way. I wouldn't like to mention the name of the company. But we've been working with them, and we've just realized that, look, this company went into one of the metropolitan authorities in Accra, and the revenue profile has been grown. In fact, the AMA, I think, yes, used to generate about, let's say 5 million Ghana cedis for much of 2022, 2023. By the middle of this year, across all tax handles, I think AMA has been able, it's actually getting to almost 20 million. And I think these things must be looked at, optimized, and then we can generate, we can make sure people pay their due. But beyond that, we should also be asking what exactly the taxes are being used for. And I think those conversations ought to be had. I would rather we agree that, look, some of these interventions are useful, but at the same time also ask that the government does its due by making sure that they do not dissipate the funds without let or hindrance. And I think those conversations are very important to have.
Yeah, and Franklin, stay with me. Yes.
But I don't think, just a light response to Franklin, I don't think every office in Imani has got a DSTV subscription. And there's a reason to why that is happening. So that's not a petty issue to deal with.
Actually, I was still referring to...
and also, I don't think all of, including Franklin and his vice presidents and senior management at Imani, fly business class. So, and that means that these are all important measures organizations take, including, Office of Government Machinery. So all of these things are little issues, you may think, as they are in their individual valuable terms. So when you accumulate them, there's an aggregate value to the nation. Apart from the economic value to it, right, there's a sentimental value, right? And sentiments are a part of economic management because the people see that, okay, well, this is a government that's coming to say, okay, XYZ, expensive expenditure as far as governance is concerned, can we cut them out? And if someone is beginning to do that, presidents have come and gone, right? You talk about the expenditure. You compare the numbers and the savings that have been made between 2024 and 2025 in terms of goods and services and capital expenditure at the office of the president and see which one carries weight. We've saved a lot of cost. And I still say this, when people want to downplay the number of staff at the presidency, come and see cubicles that were built by the Exwal administration are still remaining empty. That tells you that numbers have been cut down. So if this is happening, and you look at one individual cost in terms of emoluments or salaries, ex gratia, if the person finishes 4 years, right, to go home with probably an accumulated 6 or whatever month salary, depending on whatever the emoluments committee comes with. Travel, vehicle, among other issues. Just a single person, run the numbers ballpark and see how that is. You probably run into the hundreds, the 200s. So this government has actually been prudent in saving all of this cost. If we begin to sit in this studio and belittle all of this, then we don't really want the kind of governance and accountability and frugal governance that we all call for on the streets of this country.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll be downplaying that.
Chenebo's point is that you have to be transformational.
Sorry?
You have to be transformational in your...
This is part of a transformational agenda. How many presidents have been bold enough to do what President Mahama is doing? Where DSTV is not existing in the Jubilee House in the last administration. Where government appointees not drawing...
Tiny mighty drop.
But when you say tiny mighty drop, I don't get it. When I did these numbers in terms of my ballpark figures, I was counting number of chip compounds, number of schools that could actually put into... I'm not saying that's what the government is going to do because there's going to be a concrete policy and direction. And these are campaign promises. Because we started the conversation by trying to box this to say this is a PR gimmick. But these are promises that have been made, and the president is adhering to all of them. He needs to be, give him a pat on the back and his team for what they're doing. And I still maintain that the Mahama Opoko Ajuman forcing economy is on course, and it's actually trying to stabilize and actually cool off the economy to give us the real essence of what...
Okay, so you make that point, and I'm going to take a break. When I return, I hear Chenebo's take on this, but what is the strategic objective for all these cost-cutting measures? Really, what does the government want to achieve by what date? What really is it? Is this being done for the sake of it, or for sentiment, as is mentioned, or there's a real fundamental strategic objective behind these measures. Stay with me when we return. I'll pick his thoughts. And thank you for staying with us. Big conversation indeed. And tomorrow, when you wake up in the morning, your fuel price at the pump will go up by 8%. And as you've heard already, there's a direct link between that and the announcement of the fuel scrapping for all government appointees. Because government appointees now from tomorrow, they'll also be buying the same amount of money.
Direct link.
Well, there is. It's very obvious. Because from tomorrow, my good friend here, Sharif, will have to go to the same pump as I go.
Tomorrow starts in 2 hours.
And buy the same, and pay the same amount of money.
I've been doing that already for a very long time.
Yeah, well, but you were entitled to free fuel. And now the president has taken that away from you. So we all get to feel the same pinch as the political class. Trinidad Foucault is MP for Manso Nkwanta. He's a deputy ranking on I believe, the Economy and Development Committee in Parliament. Sharif Mahmood Khalid is the economic advisor to the vice president. And we have Franklin Kujo, is the president of Imani Ghana. And before I went to the break, he was talking about this being part of the government's big agenda. You've questioned their ambition here. But I wanted to pause for a second and look at the big picture. This is happening at the time and when the cedi is appreciated quite historically. We have record reserves now. The IMF program dictated that we should have raised in the first quarter of the year 400 million. The BOG governor today announced that we've actually have done 3 times that already. And they have more forex in the bank that if they want to intervene in the market, they will, because the IMF has said we've already done 1.4 billion in the first quarter of the year. And the warning, you need to slow down. Bank of Ghana governor says we have enough. We actually raised enough reserves. We have the buffers to go. That, again, is positive. They are selling record amount of gold and holding the reserves. Inflation is on a steep decline. The IMF is projecting now that we'll probably end the year at 8%. That is, again, will be the first time we're hitting that in a decade, possibly. Prices of goods in the market, because inflation is dropping, is now beginning to also trend downwards. And then you have a government that is also now showing you that they can also cut their own costs. If you put in that big context, clearly the government is really being transformational, are they not? Because the big ticket items are all trending positive. And not only positive, historically positive.
Thank you. Thank you, Evans. That's an interesting subject. So, I mean, firstly, I want to put to rest the issue about I'm saving this, I'm saving that, because I'm asking my appointees not to use as a first class and business class and whatever. I mean, you use this when you have your small business that you set up and that sort of thing. It saves you some few thousands and that sort of thing. For a whole nation, if you look at it, it's significant. Transform the nation, not about sitting economy class.
But then I think it ties back direct to my question.
No, I get it. But what I'm saying is those ones, we should put them to rest. They are insignificant. So the issue about the economy haven't been transformed, Evans, and I mean viewers, I want to put this across. You see, it's really important that we unpack all these to understand really what is happening and what are the triggers for this, what are the antecedents to all these. Okay, it's really important. And some of the parameters that we have seen, if you really break them down, you would understand where they're coming from. Look at the cedi that we're talking about that has strengthened. Yeah, it's good for everyone. I mean, so undoubted at all. If the cedi is strong, it's good for everyone, including myself. So why not? But we need to understand why so. Is it because something has been done from January to now, specifically, that has led to the cedi strengthening? That is the question. Look at it. So, firstly, we know that major trading currencies on their own, because of all these trade wars that have been going on, major trading currencies on their own, they've weakened. These are backed by facts. The US dollar, the euro, the pound, they've all weakened. So relatively, the cedi will strengthen. We know that, yes, there were gold reserves built. But if you compare the metric tons of gold reserves built from January to now, it's just about 1 metric ton. That cannot transform, change the strength of the cedi. We know that the central bank, and now it is out there, everyone knows, has been coming to the market significantly to support with US dollars. So if you look at all these parameters, ask yourself which one really is transformational by this government that has strengthened the cedi. Look at balance of payment. It's one of the key parameters to determine the strength of a currency. Balance of payment. Ask yourself, yes, it has trended positively, but what if you unpack it, what really are the issues behind? Yes, our two key commodities have done well. Gold has done well in terms of, world market price. Cocoa has done well also in terms of market price, world market price. But ask yourself, Evans, if today the government was able to tell Ghanaians that it has done something, whatever, that had led to cocoa production going up, you will say clap. But that has not been the case. On the contrary, cocoa production for this year, as was said by Cocoa Board, the light crop season is going down versus projection by 10,000 metric tons. So cocoa production is rather going down by 10,000 metric tons. What is the government doing about that? So if you see balance of payment going up and cocoa is contributing, it's not because the government has done anything special to boost production. It is because world market price has gone up. And that is volatile. Government doesn't control that. So why would you take credit for that? You can't take credit for that. Take the inflation, which we say is coming down. Yes, inflation has trended down nicely. Ask yourself, what has been the input? Yes, if you look at it, the non-food basket is what is contributing the most. The food basket, the reduction is really marginal. So the non-food basket, what is contributing to this? It's because fuel prices started trending down and led to, transport companies reducing fares and all that, which led to reduction. The food segment is marginal. So you ask yourself, what transformation has led to that? What has the government done to reduce fuel prices? Fuel prices are determined by, world market prices. So what has been the input of the government? So if inflation is coming down, tell us really the transformation that has been done by the government that has led to inflation going down. Not just seeing the figures coming down and then you're taking credit for it. So I've told you the cedi strengthening, what has been the input? The inflation that has been trending down, what has been the input? What are the other things to talk about? Really?
Okay.
Let me
answer that question.
Let me tell the honourable member of parliament.
Okay, I'm ready to listen.
What is transformational?
Okay.
What is transformational? Based on what we inherited as a government in this overheated economy, is that a gold board has been set, which is backed by law, legislation, and has a functional board. That is transformational. What is transformational is that blue chip investments such as pensions have been saved, right? We're not attacking them where you have pensioners hitting the streets and picketing, which happened a few months ago before we took office. What you have done, again, is to allow or touch every form of investments that was meant to be sustainable. You talk about cocoa. You went to the market, you couldn't syndicate.
So your transformation is only transformation because they were poor.
We are transforming. I'm giving the indicators of our transformation.
Yeah, but your indicators is all pegged on
but if you've messed up an economy where the dashboard is all gone negative, would you not bring it to positive?
Yeah, but you're comparing yourself to the blind man.
We're not comparing ourselves to the blind. We have to transform the economy, and that's part of the transformation. If you're moving something from a negative to a positive, it's transformation. If you move junk status to a -B, is that not transformation?
Where we were on that, dear watch,
yes,
you couldn't have done any worse. You couldn't have done any worse. We hit rock bottom.
Oh, so if we had decided,
went bankrupt.
So if we had decided, one, that we were not in a position to service loans, right? We would miss.
You couldn't have.
No, we could have.
You couldn't.
Governments have such options.
No, you
right?
Don't, you didn't have that option.
That we can pay our external debtors.
No, you couldn't.
No,
because you came to an IMF program.
Oh, wow, when they met.
That you were actually negotiating, you finishing the process.
Don't sovereign nations develop default on IMF programs?
No, but not ours. Not where we were in the program. Not where we were in the program.
But there are options that this government could have gone through with the economy.
What you're suggesting wasn't an option.
Right. So when I say that, for example, they went to the syndicated market, they couldn't even syndicate. Well, under an IMF program, when they went to the syndicated market and couldn't syndicate, and COCO syndicated loans were the most basic.
Have you syndicated?
Have we tried to go to syndicated market? Is that a model we are running? We have a new administration and management in place who have different financial models that they are going to introduce. Have we gone to the market and not syndicate?
I guess the question we're asking is, independent of what they did.
No, ever since we came, you want to make the comparison, so I want to do it.
I don't want to make
you're bringing it.
No, you started by pegging your transformation.
No, I'm not pegging, but if a government goes negative, you have to bring it positive. Can you make it a quantum leap without bringing it
that's my point. I mean,
so my point
you were rock bottom. You couldn't have done any worse.
If you're talking about transformation, if you are rock bottom and you move up, that is transformational. Unless, of course, we're missing the context.
I'm looking more. My question was really based on.
No, my point is, how do you?
What interventions have led to those positive numbers? I'll just.
No, you're still asking for interventions when we talk about internal controls, among other issues that have happened. A commitment, sentiments of the market, investor confidence. These are not indicators, and these have not been generative of us. What happened when we were on junk status? We went to the bond market on a borrowing spree and came back to this country. Everything went negative. No investor confidence, no nothing. So if we've come and we've been able to whet the appetite of investors, you're saying we've done nothing. Within 6 months, we're not even talking about 4 years. We're not talking about 8 years. Right, so can we really indeed drill down and contextualize it? So if you're asking for transformation, the transformation is taking us from the rock bottom that you refer to elevating us to a positive status, having stability, right, and laying the foundational ground for the grand transformation. So this is the foundation for the transformation you're asking for. If it's grand transformation you're looking for, we are on the road to doing that. And I believe that this is what we should be looking at. Your central bank was posting losses, right? So if a central bank is playing interventions on the market, is that illegal? At least they are not posting losses in any case. So when you talk about the forex market, we look at the stability that is happening. If it was artificial, would it be this stable? You keep saying this was what was happening. You talk at a point when we're even having the Iranian situation and the Israeli situation. They were very happy, excited, thinking that it's going to affect the economy. But when you have resilient economies, what happens? Right? To an extent that you even had a prudent president stepping in to say, look, I have this measure of fuel increase at the pump, but for this reason, we need to pause. We crunch the numbers, we make our extrapolation and projections to see what is happening. And we're going back to the policy. And that's what everyone in
to that fundamental question, though, what really is the ultimate strategic objective for all these expenditure controls?
In economics, there's nothing like an ultimate, right?
You must have
you
must have an end in your mind.
No, an end is in our mind.
Which is?
So
all these scrapping through allowances and all the other measures that we've talked about on this program, what is it? What is the end? What's the end game?
No, you look at it. We're looking at stabilizing the economy. As I mentioned, we inherited an overheated economy where everything went south, which you know. So if you've come in 6 months, what magic one do you expect a government in terms of transformation?
The scrapping through allowances to stabilize the economy.
Oh, well, but so you think that the measures we're taking, if you're reducing it to just scrapping fuel allowances, you're
Oh, no, not only that. I've mentioned the others.
No, but you'll be unfair to the
government,
you see, you would be unfair to the conversation if you want to treat it as though we're just going for low-hanging fruits and saying A, B, C, it's what we do.
Are they low-hanging fruits?
They are not low-hanging fruits. What I've indicated, the finance minister at the start of his vetting did indicate real commitment to the market response. You see, what we don't know is that economies are very temperamental. And the market even makes its projection. And that's what happened in the Israeli-Iranian situation. The market had, at the time they were happy thinking that it's going to be a case of Russia-Ukraine. The market had already read and responded what was going to happen, right? So Arthur Folsom, the Honorable Dr. Arthur Folsom did indicate the commitment they were going to make to our external debt, did indicate our commitment to an IMF program, which we inherited. It's a legacy IMF program. Did indicate the real commitments of what was going to happen as far as the economy was concerned. And if you think, or any practicing economists think that these are not measures in actually stabilizing or cooling off an overheated economy, then I don't know where that economics is coming from.
Franklin, finally to you. So if the accusation is that these are aggressive, transformational enough, what else do you want to see? But also the question about sustaining these cuts over the next 4 years is a big question. So the fuel has been scrapped. We have not been told whether this is a temporal measure or this is a permanent one. How does this precedent sustain these cuts over 4 years, and is that even realistic? Or do you have to do even more?
Admittedly, I think this particular one is a bit half-assed. I mean, nobody heard anything. We just were told that this is what they've done. I mean, my good friend, Dr. Khalid, was shocked that he only heard it, and obviously he became a victim. I don't think we need to run governance that way, by the way. I mean, I can understand that there's a new era and you want to do things differently. Even if they are low-hanging fruits, communicate them in an organized manner. And I think the question you asked is important. I mean, are we going to sustain this? At what point are we going to say, okay, look, maybe we need to reorder the steps? I think it's important to have some sort of certainty, some predictability, so that we are able to do things in an organized manner. That way, you're able to calculate. Otherwise, my good friend Khalid will not struggle to determine how much actually would be saved. I think we should be a bit cautious in doing some of these things. However, what transformation? A word like transformation, I think obviously I could say it's a marked change in form, in nature of appearance. It is true that there's been some transformation. I'm not saying it's significant enough in terms of building the structures of the economy. I haven't seen that yet. But in terms of, there's soft issues, all these appointees being told, look, make sure you how do you call it, your assets are declared. If you don't do it, you are charged. Those little things. And I think that goes to the heart of branding the country. And that not as a branding, but actually the product itself needs to be very, should I call it, light. And as far as I'm concerned, I think John and the NDC have actually done well in transforming this economy, transforming this country from the doldrums of the backwaters of being considered as the backwaters of economic savagery. I mean, look at what we went through. It was junk-headed. There was no respect for us, and now they've given us a new face. At least some respectability has been restored. If these little things matter in that particular journey to transforming the country's image, well, so be it. You're not asking, and I think everybody is asking, how do we apply these things to the economy, the shoulders of the economy, which essentially is at the heart of the matter. The 24-hour economy is an interesting thing to say or do, but we need to anchor all of this structurally through value chain analysis, which I'm sure Dr. Khalid and Uzi know very well. Now it is time to walk the talk. And I think that is where the big shift in transformation, in terms of structural transformation, would have happened. Otherwise, Evans, and to you and to every Ghanaian, I think we should be thankful that the NDC actually, under John, and whoever branded John this way, has done a tremendous job. Yeah. Giving us a little facelift. And so these little things matter. And that's what the Ghanaian wants. Go and ask tomorrow, go to the street, you'll be surprised. I'm sure this political gimmick, whatever we call it, PR gimmick, seems to have cleverly doused, the anger that others may express.
Yeah, and you're right, because at the point when they first announced the 1% fuel levy, GPLT, for example, were up in arms. They were threatening to go on a strike. But as we know now, they are in full support now of that
and
1%.
The spirit, and you know the beauty of it, the other side is that the government actually said, hold on, because of the Iranian conflict. Everybody liked it. This is how you rule. This is how you organize people. You don't have to sound all-knowing, running around, wasting everybody's time. Little things.
Frankly, I'm grateful. Just a quick 30 seconds to you.
Yeah, 30 seconds strictly. Thank you, Ivan. All I would say is, BOG should know that just pumping dollars into the system is unsustainable. They shouldn't think Ghanaians will support that. It's not helpful to the nation anyway, just pumping dollars to the system. Government should start paying contractors, holding the money to your chest.
They've announced they will do that.
Thinking, that helps in managing the fiscal space. Doesn't make sense. Spend. That is how the economy will turn around. We should be bold with policies. All the policies that we've mentioned, we've talked about. They've talked about, we haven't seen policy documents. Parliament, has not seen policy document backing these programs. Economic transformation, whatever, apprenticeship program, whatever, we've not seen policy documents. So we should see policy documents. We want to see transformation, real transformation, and not about
DST. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you. Thank you very much. Sharif, I'm grateful that you joined us, and frankly, also enjoyed us for evening.